The next morning at the station. What should have been a lovely early spring morning is dampened by a grey sky flecked with dark storm clouds. A mist of rain hangs in the air. The sun seems to be trying its best, but its morning rays barely make it past the barrier of cloud. I shake myself off as I step inside the station, the moisture sinking into my coat. At least I don't have to wear a uniform anymore. That itchy material soaked up rain like a sponge. Wearing what I like is certainly a major perk of the job, though mostly I wear something. Hmm, all styles are available to all genders. Uh, uh hmm. Sure, we'll go with casual. I usually just wear jeans and a t-shirt. It's simple enough and will get me through any situation I come up against. I yank off my coat and head to my office, being the first one in as usual. Or at least so I thought. I pause in the doorway to find Unit Bravo already gathered inside, strewn about the room in the same positions they'd taken up the day before. Nat smiles in greeting as I enter. Good morning, Detective. Hmm. Good morning, everyone. After hanging up my coat, I move towards my desk. I guess you don't sleep much, Detective. What with being in so early? Farah asks with a chuckle. Don't worry. Uh, neither do we. Nat lets out a heavy sigh in the chair next to her. Ignoring the banter, I take a seat. Did you find anything at the warehouse? Nat shifts forward in her seat. Well, we thought. No. Ava's strong reply cuts through whatever Nat had been about to say. Nat's head whips around to face her leader, a frown creasing her dark brows together. I watched the odd silent exchange pass between the pair. Uncertainty tugs at me. The question was not exactly hard to answer. My attention flickers to Farah, noticing the gleeful smile quivering at the corners of her lips as she watches her colleagues glare at each other. I only return my focus to them when Nat turns away from Ava and sinks deeper into her seat. As Ava said, we didn't find anything. Why are you lying? Why are you lying? I flicked my gaze between the pair and arch a brow. Well, that reply was just a big fat lie. They obviously found something, but why hide it? I thought we were supposed to be working together. I asked, my tone stern. Nat's brow creases into a frown. We are. Folding my arms, I glance between them. Then why are you lying about this? We found nothing, Detective. Ava's reply is as stern as my question had been. I realize the conversation is over as much as I want to pursue it. Maybe they think they can do it all without me? I glare over at the stiff postured team leader. Or at least Ava thinks she can do it without me. I purse my lips at the thought, pushing it to the back of my mind. For now, I have to keep focused on the case, which will be more difficult if they're hiding things. Well, we still need to find the actual murder site. She definitely wasn't killed where she was found, I say. Was it the same with the other murders he's committed? Yes, Nat replies, this time not interrupted by her brooding leader. Ava is once more staring out the window. I let out a long breath, looking down at my notepad. It's painfully empty of clues or notes. Were any of the victims from the same location? A throaty, slightly condescending laugh erupts from Morgan. The locations meant nothing. Once again, her words are softened by an accent I can't place. Maybe hearing it more would help me narrow it down, but the idea of striking up a conversation with the woman now glaring at me through a wall of smoke makes me. Hmm. Wonder if she's even capable of more than two words in a sentence. Of all of them, Morgan has been the least sociable, which is saying something compared to Ava. I wonder if it's even possible for the woman to string a sentence together that is more than two words and isn't insulting or threatening. The focus is pulled back to the room as Nat speaks again. The previous victims came from all over, Nat explains. That's an understatement, Farah replies. We're talking worldwide. She spreads her arms out in emphasis. Hmm. You think he was trying to mislead authorities by killing all over? Ava breaks from staring out of the window to look at me with a raised brow. That's quite a clever idea, Detective. The unexpected compliment hangs in the air before she shakes her head and stares at once again. But no. You're very certain about that? She doesn't deign to respond. Farah suddenly gives a chuckle, seeming to be lost in thought. At least it's meant we've gotten to go to some very interesting places in search of him. Remember Alaska? She chortles. Morgan did not do well in the cold. The comment receives a grumble from Morgan in the corner, but But there weren't as many humans in Alaska, so that helped cheer her up a little. Not many humans? I asked, cocking my head to one side at the strange word choice. A heavy quiet descends over the room, broken only by Farah letting out a strained chuckle. Oh, not many people. She throws a sheepish look at Ava, whose features are furrowed into a tight knot. A knock from the door makes us all look up to find Tina standing in the doorway. A worried frown lines her face, her shoulders hunched. My thoughts of the conversation are quickly pushed away by concern. Hey, Jules, can I talk to you for a moment? She asks, clutching the door to keep her balance. I give a nod. Something is obviously wrong. Standing from my place, I glance back over the group before moving out of the office and shutting the door. Inside the office. Not many humans? Nat splutters. What's wrong with you? With all the slip ups you make, you're damn lucky people don't believe in vampires. Bra holds up her hands in innocence. Look, I'm sorry, but the detective makes it easy to get comfortable. I just forgot. Ava lets out a long groan. She spreads her hands on the desk and closing her eyes to breathe through the tension, making her shoulders knot. Going to your happy place, Ava? Bra asks, to which Ava slams her fists down so hard the edge of the desk splinters. They all stare at the damage. Ava groans again, rubbing her hands over her face. We should just tell them the truth, Nat says suddenly, gaining the brunt of Ava's full annoyed attention. What? Nat shrugs. Jewel obviously makes us feel at ease, so it's possible they take the news just as easily. Secrets never end well. Ava shakes her head as though the idea is the most ridiculous thing she's ever heard. We're not telling them anything. I agree. Morgan adds from her place, hidden beside the filing cabinet. 2 words. She's still puffing on a cigarette. It has burned down so low it's almost singeing the vampire's fingers. I'll just become even more of an annoyance. Not 2 words, but an insult. The pattern holds. If we have to work together, it's better if everything is out in the open, Nat says, ignoring Morgan. But we're not working together, Ava explains. Our mission is to keep them away from the killer, not aid them in an investigation which will lead them right towards the killer. She speaks the words slowly through gritted teeth. Nat stands from her place. A mission we could do a lot better with their full cooperation. Their glares hold for a long moment. Her eyes obviously once again enjoying the crackle of tension pouring off of them. A grin widening. You're too soft with the humans, Nat, Ava says finally, the words spoken as a half insult. She eventually turns away, any hostility with her oldest friend making her uneasy. We have a job to do. We protect the detective without them knowing anything. Nat opens her mouth to protest, but Ava holds up a hand to stop her. That is an order. Humans aren't going away, Nat replies, her tone quiet, not liking to argue with her friend either. You'll have to deal with that fact eventually. I have no care that they're not going away, and I will do my utmost to protect them from what they don't know. Ava shakes her head, her tension only tightening. But that doesn't mean I have to like them. And with those words, she strides out of the office with heavy steps. With Tina at the front desk. I follow Tina to the front desk where she leans heavily against the counter and runs her fingers through her curled hair. We're alone since Douglas usually doesn't arrive until, well, whenever he feels like it. Kate Hayes ran the station this morning, worried for Garrett, Tina explains, biting at her bottom lip. Her son? I ask in surprise. Kate, being the only dentist in town, is usually run off her feet. To help her out, Garrett has often spent his time after school at the station until she can collect him. Usually it's Tina who keeps him company, helping him with his homework or teaching him the ropes. From the little I've interacted with him, he seems sensible and nice enough. He didn't come home last night. What if something happened? Tina flicks her worried gaze up to meet mine, her voice choking in her throat. With a psycho running around town. What exactly is it you hope I'll... we'll find him, don't worry. She attempts to smile, but it doesn't really work. I just hate the idea of him out there alone with a killer on the loose. Oh, don't worry. He's already dead. I know. So do I. This time she does brighten a little. Thank you, Jules. We both flinch as the phone on the desk gives a shrill ring. Tina lets out a sudden relieved breath at the sound. Oh, it must be Kate. She said she'd ring back as soon as Garrett turned up. She reaches for the phone. I turn away, thankful the situation is resolved before it became something much worse. Heading back to my office, I shake my head, staring at the ground. With what's happened, it's no wonder this town is on high alert over every small thing. My thoughts come to an abrupt halt as I crash into someone storming out of the doorway of my office. I stumble back, feeling more like I collided with a brick wall than a person. Regaining my balance, I glance up, finding Ava staring at me in genuine surprise. She quickly straightens herself out. I apologize, I wasn't paying attention. Neither was I, sorry. I brush my t-shirt down and then nod. I wasn't Eva, sorry. With stiff apologies made, silence falls over us once again. Ava's frown returns. Ava turns to avoid my gaze, her focus shifting to look over the station. I arch a brow when her nose wrinkles as though smelling something unpleasant. You really don't want to be here, do you? It's a moment before I realize I spoke the question aloud. She's quick to reply. We're here now, so it's more a question of dealing with it rather than liking it. Hmm. It's not so bad here. Maybe it'll grow on you. Like a tumor, you mean? Good comeback. I frown at her reply, though when I glance at her, I find she's actually smiling. Suddenly, I can't tell whether she's mocking me or joking with me. The thought is ripped from my mind when there's a sudden clatter at the front desk. Jules? Tina calls. I turn. Her normally rosy skin has paled to a ghostly white, the phone gripped tightly in her hand. There's been another murder. Next chapter. In the center of town. We all travel to the crime scene in the center of town separately. Whatever government vehicle unit Bravo uses must have sped through the streets because they arrived well before me and I didn't exactly drive slow. I park my car near the police barrier. There are thankfully no crowds this time and move down the alley to join the others who are already looking over the victim. The street is so narrow, the walls looming so high that even the remnants of morning sun can't pierce through the deep shadows. Poor kid, Farah says, shaking her head. I shove my hands into my coat pockets, my throat constricting slightly at the sight. It's a male teenager crumpled in a heap at the edge of the dank alleyway? Dark alleyway, I presume. It could be a dank alleyway, but not really what the game's going for here, I think. His face hidden. Tina, having left before us to secure the scene, approaches. It's... She takes a shaky breath. It's Garrett Hayes. I guess that shouldn't be a surprise, but that's not what we're gonna say. We'll remain silent. I open my mouth, then shut it again. There's little I can say at the moment. The only way we can really help is to find whoever did this. I turn to her. What details do we have? She glances at her notepad. Nothing much. A road cleaner spotted him early this morning. She takes a shuddering breath. The forensic team won't be here for a while, since they have to travel back from the city. And with one last look at Garrett, she turns slowly and slouches away. Ra follows Tina's retreat with a cocked eyebrow. Quite the woman, that one. Nat swipes her round the back of the head. You're standing at a murder scene. Show some respect. We haven't had a murder in Wayhaven for decades, and now we have two? Yeah, that's what serial killers usually do to a town. I asked the question more to myself than the others. I guess my hopes that the killer had skipped town are now thoroughly dashed. Looks that way, Farrar replies, suddenly glancing at me with a smile. But on the bright side, you get to hang out with us for longer. Are we sure it's the same killer? Ava asks. Yeah, it's definitely him, Morgan says. I twist around to look at her. What? How can you know that? Her lips sharpen into a long smirk, reminding me too much of a wolf to be comfortable. I shift on the spot to avoid taking an instinctive step back. A hunch? She offers. I ignore the statement, all of us once again returning our attention to the boy folded into one corner. His black coat is bunched up around his neck. The killer must have used the collar of his coat to drag him down here, I suggest. The fabric is pulled out of shape. I crouch down to study it closer, my nose wrinkling at the putrid smell of trash from the overflowing bins only a few feet away. Using a pen, I lean forwards to push the collar out of the way a little, the material stiff against my attempts. Wait, detective, don't. But Nat's warning comes too late. The coat shifts position. The boy's head suddenly lolls to one side, his neck exposed. The skin is completely shredded, any of it remaining stained dark with blood. Muscles and tissue have been ripped away from bone, protruding from the jagged gash in a sickening display. The mangled sight of it takes a moment to process before I can react. That's just all kinds of wrong. Look away. I grimace at the horrific sight, curling my hand out over my mouth. That's just all kinds of wrong. I mutter, attempting to look away, but knowing the memory is burned into my mind. I glance over at the rest of the group. None of them seem as surprised at this discovery as I am. Have you seen this before? I ask, taking a deep breath to maintain my composure. Not exactly, but Nat begins to itch. Ava throws her a sharp stare. Nat fins her lips for a moment. No. I glance back at the victim, paying closer attention to the wound. I don't know of any weapon that could have done that. Whoever killed him hadn't just slit the boy's throat, they'd torn it open. Things like this just don't happen in Wayhaven. I ball my fists in my pockets, stepping away from the body and giving a defeated sigh. Jules, Tina calls, all of us spinning around to face her. The forensics team is here and she trails off. His mother still needs to be notified. My stomach sinks at the realization. Right. Tina heads to where a couple of pristinely clean silver vans have drawn up. Several technicians in white suits step out. The bustle of activity from the techs shatters the somber silence that had fallen over the scene. Well, I purse my lips. I suppose I'd better go deliver the news. I'll meet you guys back at the station. I turn to head away, my steps heavy, resisting the idea of what I have to do next. You're not going alone, Ava calls, making me pause mid-step. I round on her, my teeth gritted. Excuse me? One of us is going with you, she says, her stern voice only making my annoyance grow. The rest of us have to check in with Agent Langford. Is that tone's really going to make them open to suggestions? Farah says. She slaps Ava on the back, who throws her a stern glare. Nice going. I suppose we're meant to be working together. Having backup will be useful, as I don't know what I'll find at Kate's house. Good call, Detective, Ava replies. Amazingly, there is no gloating in her tone, just sincerity. It helps to try and remember this is about finding a murderer, not personal feelings, but that's a hard task in this moment. Hmm. Huh. Go on then, Ava. You suggested it. You know what? I begin stepping closer and folding my arms. Seeing as you're so concerned about me, Ava, you come with me. She stares at me for a long moment. It's hard not to notice the way the others shift uncomfortably in the silence. Fine, she says finally, making my brows shoot up in surprise. She turns to the others. Go see Agent Langford and report in. We'll meet afterwards. Where do you want to meet? Nat asks, her question directed at me, which I note makes Ava's jaw tense. By the time we're done, Verda will probably have some results for us. We can meet back at the station, I say. Ava gives a stiff nod. With that decided, the group splits in separate directions. Ava and I going one way and the others heading further down the alley. At the edge of town. The victim's mother, Kate Hayes, lives in one of the small groups of houses at the edge of town. Ringed by a barrier of forest in one direction and a manicured community green on the other, it's rather idyllic. Yet the normally bright white houses appear grey in the shadow of the day, heavy clouds obscuring whatever sun there might be. The trees, usually plump with lush green foliage, are bare and stark, clawing at the houses as they shiver in the chill breeze. Even the usual cheerful birdsong has gone silent. Pulling up outside of Kate's house, I stare at the blue-painted door for a moment. It's the first time I've delivered news like this, but it's part of the job. I let my hands fall from the steering wheel into my lap. Although I've never delivered news like this before, I know it's part of the job. Do you need more time before we go in there? Ava asks, breaking the silence. A silence which has hung heavy between us the whole ride over. I snap my gaze to her. I can't put it off forever. No, but it's not an easy thing. I understand if you need a moment. Her voice is gentle, and I observe full of understanding. I give a grateful nod. Thanks, but I'd better get on with it. As we pour ourselves out of the small confines of the car, Ava instantly pulls out a pair of thin-framed aviator sunglasses and puts them on. Even in the small motions, her movements seem rigid and tense. I can't help but wonder if she's ever at ease. Pulling myself out of the momentary thought, I begin walking up the front path to the door. The sky blue paint is not as inviting in that moment as it should be. The door swings open before I even have a chance to knock.